It's another excellent night down at Crypto Cove. Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Hello, Hunter. Hey, we're doing great.
Excellent, excellent.
You're,
And go ahead. All right then.
yeah,
Uh, and tonight's actually a rather special Crypto Cove because we're actually doing something a bit different tonight, something we haven't done in a while. And I'll tell you all why. I'll go ahead and share my screen and move this up here. My tooling has officially reached version 2.0. Not technically version 2.0.1 since I did a minor update this morning. But yeah, we're on version 2.0. We've made a lot of changes since we started, and I definitely wanted to go over them all. But first things first, let's, well, I'm not going to be, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. I'm not going to be too self-confident to act for a big, applause for everyone. But anyway, whoa!
hmm,
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen again. And yep, we also have a bit of fireworks. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. And looks like we've got a couple folks that just joined us. Welcome for anyone who just joined us. We're doing a bit of a celebration for version 2.0 of my tooling. So very nice to have reached this point. Very nice indeed. So I'll go ahead and reset the Zoom here. So tonight we're going to go over a how-to in regards to how to work every bit of tooling that's on my tooling website because it's been a while since we've done that. And yeah, well, the tooling has certainly evolved quite a bit since then. So with that, we'll go ahead and I'll share my screen and we'll go all the way to the top. All right, we have the donation buttons. We'll come back to those in a minute. And add all tokens to MetaMask. Now, this is the tool that started all. This is definitely what started this tooling back in my humble beginnings, back doing using the Blogspots page, and someone's drawing on my screen. So what this tooling does, this bit of tooling is pretty self-explanatory. It's meant to add or pull flame tokens over to MetaMask, including USDT. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that, even though I already have all our tokens added. If we go ahead and click this button, the page then prompts you to confirm that you do indeed want to add all the tokens to MetaMask. So go ahead and click OK. And then MetaMask will pop up with a token adding suggestion. So if we scroll down, we can see suggestions to add USDT, PFB, PFS, PFG, PFI, and PML. And I don't really have much way control as to the order that they show up here. If I had my way, they'd show up in line up lowest to highest, but that's not really under my control. It's just a matter of the luck of the draw with how the coding goes in your particular case. But you'll see if you already have a balance in any of these, they'll show here within a certain aspects. Like for example, with PFB, I know there's a bit in there, but this is just a rounding error. So yeah, this tooling evolved from first off, it was just all four of these tokens fired off just one after the other to the point where users would have to click on 4 or 5 add token requests to add all the tokens. And after we added USDT, I decided to retool this bit of tooling to where it would fire all the requests all at once. And it was lucky I did because just a few weeks thereafter, we added PML, and that would have meant we would have had one, two, three, four, five, six different requests to fire if we did all this just one at a time. So definitely a good thing that I made those changes. This bit of tooling has absolutely matured over time, and the next change that I'm planning on making is adding our new community token when it's released on the 4th. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and click Add Token. And we'll go ahead and open up MetaMask. And we can see that all of our tokens are here. And one other thing I want to note is that you all may see the token icons here. These favicons are actually taken from the Pool Microlending website. And surprisingly, my tooling here is the only way to get the token icons. Without them, adding tokens manually means that you just can't get these. So I was definitely proud to make that bit of a change there because that definitely helps with the user experience. And I actually had some comments from some designers in the community who said that they couldn't believe no one else thought of that before. All right. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but are there any questions about this bit of tooling before we move on? No? All
Oh,
right, then. We'll go ahead and move on to the next bit. Switch Binance Smart Chain RPC. Now, this bit of tooling came about as a response to the errors that we sometimes get with the RPCs that or the default option in MetaMask or any sort of custom one that a user might have. And before we had this, we did this all manually. I had this really cumbersome guide that walks you through how to manually add in RPC to your MetaMask wallet from start to finish. And it also had a list of several different RPCs that you could try. Whereas here, it's definitely quite a bit simpler, although MetaMask has changed some things recently to where it's no longer quite so simple, but it's still simpler than having to type it all in manually. So, like for example, if I wanted to select public nodes is a popular one. So I'll go ahead and Joe, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
could you just let me know what RPC references?
It stands for Remote Procedure Call. Based, I've had this in my guide, but to sort of make a long story short, essentially, in well, I'll say it like this: think of the blockchain as a giant library, and
Hmm.
the RPC is a librarian. Now,
Okay,
there may be a point where the librarian that you have picked out might be slow, might be unresponsive, or something might be wrong with it. So when you get to that point, wouldn't it be nice to be able to switch to a new librarian, maybe one that's better
yep,
in some
okay.
way?
All right, thank you.
Although I should be careful with the word better because it can definitely get to the point where one or a couple of these may be down or slow at one point, whereas another may be working perfectly fine, and vice versa. It really all depends on how the network is running at one point. That's why we have several options to choose from here. And several that aren't reliant on any of the big three cloud infrastructures because we definitely had some issues with that when Cloudflare had an outage a few months back. So that's definitely what spawned the idea to flesh this out quite a bit more because Originally, we just had some standard RPC options here that weren't really delineated in a real way, shape, or form. And yeah, now we have all these options here. So that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and select public node. And then MetaMask will pop up with a request to update BNB chain to the public node RPC. I'll go ahead and click confirm. Now, up until about a couple months ago, that's all you needed to do. MetaMask would change the RPC automatically when you clicked confirm. But nowadays, it's gone a bit more difficult because MetaMask has decided that changing your RPC is really something that the user needs to do for security purposes. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and open up MetaMask like we just did. Then we'll click on BNB chain. And you might notice that it says Binance Smart Chain right underneath BNB chain. In your case, it might look like something different. You just have to see that it has a bit of a drop down arrow right here. So we'll go ahead and click there. And you can see that you now have the public node option available to you. So we'll go ahead and click on public node to change the RPC that we use. And that's all there is to it. Still pretty simple. And yeah, this is definitely something that you would probably only want to use if the default RPC that MetaMask uses in Pure is malfunctioning for some reason, or if the custom one that you have that's from any one of these is malfunctioning for whatever reason. And there's definitely a lot of ways and a lot of reasons that could happen. Again, that's why we have so many here. So definitely one of these is bound to work out of all these options here. So are there any questions about that before we move on to the next bit of tooling? Alrighty, we'll go ahead and share my screen again. All right, and this bit of tooling is actually three tools in one. Why is it three tools in one? Because I say so.
Mhm.
All right, so the first bit of tooling we have here is token charts. These link buttons take you to any of our tokens. Like for example, here we have for the PFI charts. And yeah, we see that opens up 8space. And ditto with PFB. And you get the idea. It goes up until we get to PML. And this is definitely another change that I'm going to make when we add the new community token. There's going to be a button to access the chart for its here, access the token on BSC scan here, and access the swap pair here. So our next part of this bit of tooling is showing the token entry on BSC scan. Like for example, we'll go ahead and click on PML, and that opens up the PML coin entry on BSC scan. And from here, we can actually do a couple different useful things. Like for example, we can take a look at the token transfers from the path file. And we can also take a look at the current holders list and see who holds the most of the token that we're looking at. In this case, that's PML. And we can see from now, this isn't something that BSC Scan offers per se. This is tagging that I've added to the private tagging system in BSC Scan. But we can see number 5, Maria Davidson has the most PML by a pretty decent margin here. Because the the rest of these wallets addresses, the top four here are all administrative vaults. We can see that we have a contract here. We have a vault that Ace has control of. We also have the guarantee wallet and the PML treasury that holds the vast majority of the PML. Right, quick swap USDT to PIP tokens is the next and last bit of tooling that's right here. And I actually noticed some people use this during the co-owners meeting last night. Primarily because I kept pasting it in the chat for everyone to see in case they need to take a look at that swap pair. And what this does is it actually opens up a new window in PancakeSwap with the swap pair pre-populated. Like for example, if I go ahead and click swap USDT to PML, that then opens up PancakeSwap, and yep, we see that USDT is already put in there and PML is already put in there. And this works even if you don't already have the contract address for PML already in PancakeSwap. So this is an easier and faster way for users and especially new users to be able to swap to any of our tokens. For example, I'm going to buy $10 worth of PML right now. I'll go ahead and click the swap button and click confirm swap. I'll review the alert and confirm. All right, that's done. And PancakeSwap does allow me to view the transaction if I'd like. And yep, looks like we went through both versions of the contracts here. Good to go there. This is pretty standard because the V3 liquidity pool for PancakeSwap that we use with PML is definitely on the low side right now after all that buying was done last night. But with that in mind, we'll go ahead and go back over to our tooling. All right, and yep, there's the three tools in this bit of tooling. The swap USDT to any of our tokens works for any of these here, but not just PML. Like for example, if we go ahead and click swap USDT to PFI, that brings us to PancakeSwap again. And again, we see PFI there added. And again, this works regardless of if you already have PFI added into PancakeSwap here. So yeah, it's a quick way for users old and new alike to be able to purchase our tokens. Are there any questions about that before we move on to the next bit of tooling?
Perfect, thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on. I'll share my screen again. All right, the token value calculator. This is the newest bit of tooling that I have on here, although most certainly it's turned out to be one of the most commonly used bits of tooling. What this allows you to do is actually calculate three separate things. In the current price mode, it allows you to input the current price of one of our tokens and the amounts that you want to calculate the value of. So, for example, if let's say you want to calculate the value of the PML that's in your wallet right now, we can go ahead and go into MetaMask, and yeah, definitely a display bug going on here. So we'll actually go ahead and go source that from my wallet address entry on BSC scan. Yep, we don't do double takes here, folks. That's not what we do here. This is all live. So we'll go ahead and select PML and copy the balance that's in my wallet. Then we'll go back to my tooling and we'll paste that into the token amount field. Then we need to get the current price of PML. Gee, where can we get that? And we can see that PML is currently at $126,000, 472. So I'll go ahead and copy that and we'll go back over to my tooling and paste that in. Then we can click the calculate button. And there we have it. I'm sitting on about $7,915 worth of PML. Now, this doesn't take into account the PML that you have in your holding sections of Pool Micro Lending. That's kept in a different sort of bucket. Like, for example, if we go over to PML coin.app, we can see that the quotation for pricing is very similar in my wallet here to what we saw over in my tooling. But holdings is kept entirely separate. Now, what you can copy the amounts of PML that's showing here and paste it into my tooling over there and get a calculation just like we did with what I had in my wallet. But to be honest, you already have that number right here. So why make things more complicated for yourself when you already have the information here? All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and close Pool Micro Lending and go back to my tooling. Price targets. Now, this is something that Pool Micro Lending doesn't have. This allows you to select a fixed price to put into the price USD field for one of our tokens, and that is fixed at our price target for that token. So we'll go ahead and select PML again to stay in keeping with the examples we're doing here. And I'll go ahead and paste in the amount that I have in my wallet since that's still on the clipboard. And then I'll go ahead and click calculate. And going by our price target of 2 million for PML, I'm actually sitting on about $125,000 worth of PML. A bit over, I'm rounding down, but still. Alrighty. And last but not least is the calculator for the community coin. Now, this has not been updated to use the new calculation system that we're using to calculate how much of the community coin that you're going to get. The new calculation is every $1 PML you have gets you $1 million of the community coin and community token based off of its valuation on April 6th. So this hasn't been updated yet because I've definitely been focused on Operation Pantheon for most everything. Although, given that the launch is so close, it's kind of dubious to really update at this point since it's really only going to be here for a few more days before I get rid of it. So it's not going to be updated, but again, the calculation is pretty simple. $1 gets you $1 million. Pretty easy. All right. So are there any questions about that before we move on?
Well, that's pretty clear.
Alrighty, we'll go ahead and move on to the last bit at the bottom here. All right, community documents. Now, this allows you to open click links to my shared folder for Google Drive. And for anyone who doesn't know, I do maintain a list of documentation here. Quite a bit of it is full frame specific, and I use these and give these out to people so that folks can learn a bit more about the platform and definitely help them with solving problems that they may have. And we also have my most common guides here, the Common Problems Guide. That's well, like the name suggests, that's basically troubleshooting for common problems that users may have. And we also have my two onboarding guides. The Newbies Guide for those coming in through the 777 giveaway, and the General Newbies Guide for anyone who isn't coming in through the 777 giveaway. And then we have, again, in the recent edition, this is a pilot for a couple of services that I'm going to be offering on the Joy Marketplace, to where I'll do an analysis of either your wallets as a sort of wallet health check to check the permissions that your wallet has given to certain websites, as well as the tokens involved and what permissions each token has been given. And I'll also do a program analysis and risk review for any opportunity or venture that you might decide to get into or in the crypto world. Because to be frank, for every one good opportunity out there, for every one pool funding out there, there's about 100 really bad opportunities that could either rug pull you, could just completely take your money entirely, could be outright scams, or could be just not really anything to it, not going anywhere, really just a waste of your money. So this is the service that I've quietly offered to a couple members in the community every now and then, but I'm definitely starting to branch out with it a bit more, and this is definitely serving as a bit of a pilot program for that, because it will also be available over on the Joy Marketplace. And with that in mind, are there any questions about either of those two bits before we move on to the last bit on the main page anyway? Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get back to it. And if we go back up to the top again, we'll go back over to the donation buttons. Now, any donations that you make go towards keeping the tooling running and help keeping the site itself running, and ideally get to the point where this can all become self-sustainable and eventually get to the point where we can do a lot of other things I'd love to do with this tooling. And again, this is pretty simple as well. We'll go ahead and click on BNB as an example, and I'll type in 0.0001, and I'll hit confirm. And yeah, see, it's showing me to connect my wallet. Originally, this wasn't required, but as part of the safety overhaul, it is now required, because it's more secure when you have a wallet connection to the web page. So that way you have more of a bridge and a link to the website. And yeah, I already had my wallet connected, so I'll go ahead and disconnect my wallet so you can see what that looks like. Okay, now that we're disconnected, I'll go ahead and click the Connect Wallet button, and MetaMask will pop up with a connection request to my tooling website here. We'll go ahead and click Connect. All right, then we'll go ahead and click donate BNB again, and I'll type in 0.0001, and we'll click confirm. And it didn't save the state. Okay, we should be good now. Hit confirm, and there we go. MetaMask shows us a transfer request for 0.0001 BNB. That's about 6 cents worth right now. We'll go ahead and click cancel. And we'll do something similar for donate USDT. We'll input 1 in here and click confirm. How about that? I only want to donate $1 to myself. What the? I don't even know what to say about that. We'll go ahead and click cancel. Okay, so there's those two donation options. Those are definitely the more popular ones that I've seen so far from anyone who donates to me. Although when the new community token comes online, there will really be no prohibition on doing anything with that with what's in your wallet. So I'll definitely be adding that as a donation option here. All right, so are there any questions about that before we move on? All righty. And folks, it may look like that was all there was to it, but nope, not at all. My tooling actually now has 6 pages to it. So we'll go ahead and go over to the navigation drop-down menu here, and we'll go ahead and click it. And next one down, we'll go ahead and go over to our donation options. And this is an expanded list of donation buttons that you can click on in order to donate different tokens on different chains to me. And I have all the popular ones here that are on the Ethereum virtual machine, as well as support for Tron and Solana as well. And here near the bottom, I also have an option to donate other assets. For example, say if you have Bitcoin, Litecoin, or anything else you might want to donate to me, then you have an option to donate here. And what that will do is it will go ahead and swap that over to USDT on the Binance Smart Chain and send it over to me. Just to give you a bit of a quick idea as to how many tokens are supported through this widget. I'll just go down through this list here. And you all can see this, right? There's quite a few
Yeah.
options here.
Wow.
Yeah, and this isn't even all of them. So if you have some spare tokens laying around that you bought at one point and you don't really know what to do with right now, chances are pretty good I can accept them if you want to donate to me. But with that, are there any questions about any part of the donation page here before we move on to the next bit? Alrighty, we'll go ahead and move on. And we'll go ahead and go back to the main tooling page here at the bottom. And if we go back over to the navigation drop-down again, the next option is crypto directory. So we'll go ahead and click there. All right, and this is a services directory. And yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. These buttons serve as links to several common and popular services and offerings across the Web3 and crypto in general space. Now, one of the main reasons I created this was that unfortunately the crypto world is rife with a lot of different phishing attacks as well as different forms of social engineering attack. So being able to have a curated list here of the correct links means that you have a place that you can go to make sure that you're going to the right place. And we can see that I have several different sections here that will have quite a bit of what you could want out of the crypto space. And one example of the reason why this helps is because now this is something that some of the community don't really know, but there's actually several different versions of PancakeSwap, but the only version that's actually legitimate is PancakeSwap.finance. There's other versions that are essentially typo spotting, such as PancakeSwap.io, PancakeSwap.com, PancakeSwap.pro, and several different others. And unfortunately, these are all connected as wallet trainers. So if you go to an incorrect PancakeSwap website and you connect your wallet to it, then it may very well drain your wallet entirely. So all your funds, all your tokens that you have in there will just get taken out of your wallet, or at least the common ones like BNB and USDT. So being able to make sure that you're going to the right place is pretty important, wouldn't you all say? Yeah, that's why I started this. And ultimately, this tooling that I have here is going to evolve because this is actually more of a short list of the different sections and components for this directory that I could have. We can see that right now I have a bit of a directory for the directory here. Like, for example, if we click on decentralized exchanges, that brings us right to the decentralized exchanges, the section. But there's definitely more that I could add on to here, like, for example, riches, other types of physical products, and yeah, the sky's the limits, really. And eventually, I want this to evolve to a point where it becomes a one-stop shop for most anyone who's new to crypto who might come around my tooling, to the point where this will eventually evolve into a crypto beginner survival guide. And part of my guiding ethos for that is I'm asking myself, let's say that if one day something happened to me, I got amnesia, and I have to start from a beginner's history and idea of crypto. So I know no more than the average person does regarding crypto. So I then have to ask myself the question, what sort of tooling and what sort of resources would I want available to me if that happened to me? And then I consider adding it. So I want this to be something that's going to evolve to help the community, because that's absolutely what this about. This is all about, is helping the community. So are there any questions about my directory here before we move on? All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen again, and we'll go back to the main tooling page. And once again, we'll go back over to the navigation section. And this is actually something new that came about as part of Operation Pantheon, more specifically Project Aegis, and that is a new light version of tooling. Now, as a good rule of thumb, I probably wouldn't recommend using this unless you really need to use this, but if you have a low-end device or if you have a poor, unstable, or metered connection, then you'll be able to load this tooling a lot easier. I pare down a lot of the eye candy here, and I pared down a several of the libraries that are used over in the main tooling to the point where this is very light and much easier to load. If you can load MetaMask at all, then you should really have no problem loading this website here and this part of the tooling. And this this bit of the tooling, this mirror, as it were, does leave a bit on the table from the main tooling. So if you can use the main tooling, then absolutely use the main tooling. But I've done a lot here and to try to make this as secure as possible, as I've done for the main tooling. And yeah, this is definitely helpful to the community the parts of the community that need it. And this is an idea that I've ultimately been thinking about for the past couple months now. I've drawn up a couple mock-ups every now and then, but they've never really turned out that great. Whereas we can see here that this actually looks pretty decent for something that is targeted towards a low spec environment. What you all say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dark mode is, of course, also included, as is the case with all the pages on my tooling. And with that, we'll go back over to the main page again. So I'm guessing since that's really just a mirror, there won't really be any questions as far as that bit goes, but are there any?
Don't really have a question, but my hat's off. If I was wearing a hat, it'd be taking it off to you. You put in
Thank you.
so much time in this project, and I think it's fantastic. And I appreciate it. I'm sure all of us appreciate it, everything that you do in every respect, but especially with this platform here, this information is fantastic. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give some folks an idea, I don't know if anyone here has read the announcement where I announced the end of Operation Pantheon, but combined across the three projects that it comprised of, I had about 85 hours of intensive refactoring done to get to the point where we are now. And that's just for that operation that I've done over this past month. So definitely good to have that behind me. And you all might have noticed if you're a regular over in my tooling that even though this is version 2.0, there's not really a whole lot that looks different as far as the core parts of the tooling goes. And that's actually by design. I wanted to make it so that we had a secure bit of tooling here, but also I wanted to make it so that anyone who's used this in the past and still uses it regularly will still be able to access and use the tooling without any bit of learning curve to try and get used to a new system. Because this really isn't a new system at all. The main thing that we did for security was to put any transactions or anything involving wallets that would benefit from security back behind a new library. And this JavaScript library is called Ethers. And what it essentially does is it essentially serves as a secure bridge between MetaMask and other Web3 wallets and the rest of the Web3 ecosystem. And Ethers is industry standard across a lot of the Web3 ecosystem. PancakeSwap uses it, Uniswap uses it. Even the multi-million dollar and multi-billion dollar firms out there that are starting to get into the Web3 ecosystem, they use it. So if it's good enough for all those folks, it ought to be good enough for us, okay? Because ultimately, as we start working with bigger and bigger figures, we definitely need security up at that level. And I definitely talked about this during some of my last calls where we were talking about tooling, but it was also important because ultimately it's gotten to the point where my tooling has evolved from the hobby projects that it started out as to now where it's essentially de facto infrastructure here for the community. So I need to be able to build the tooling here with that in mind. And this was a giant step forward in that aspect.
Hmm.
All right, so I'll go ahead and share my screen again because we're not quite done here. The last two pages are a terms of use and a policy page. We'll go ahead and go over to terms of use. And I definitely spent quite a bit of time on these two as well, because, well, legally at this point, I'm going to have to at some point. Now, I'm not going to go through and read this, but essentially this was a matter of trying to protect myself and trying to protect the user base. And this is easily accessible if you want to read it for yourself. I'll just scroll down here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can, of course, pause it if you'd like to read it. But I'm betting that no one really likes to read these things now, do they? And we've all seen those checks on websites that say, hey, if you keep using this, this means you agree to terms of use, piracy policy, and whatnot. All right, so we'll go back over to our main tools section. And part of the reason why I decided to put that in place, and part of the reason why I felt that I needed to put that in place, is that I, I'm going to be a bit vague here, but I have received some information over the past while that there are some, shall we say, disgruntled former members of our community that might seek to attack me or my tooling in some way legally, in any way, shape, or form. So this is my way of trying to protect the tooling and trying to protect the community and also to try and protect myself from any sort of attacks thereof. Can't believe I had to do that, but
Well, you
this is
gotta
the
cover
world
yourself.
this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And on that note, I'll go ahead and share my screen again, and we'll go over to the last page. That is the piracy policy. Now, I want to be clear that a lot of this applied before the piracy policy really existed. I collect no data from anyone in the community. In fact, due to GitHub's terms of service for their pages service, I actually am barred from collecting any information from anyone. So I have no data of yours to sell. I collect no data of yours to sell. There's a couple APIs that are involved in my tooling. Like, for example, the PML price quote that you saw up at the top left corner of the main tooling. That comes from CoinGecko and Gecko Terminal. And then we also have a couple different providers, like, for example, again, the token symbols that are used when you go to add the tokens to MetaMask using my tooling, those are lifted from full microlending, and that's where those links ultimately resolve to. So again, I'll sort of just scroll through here for a minute. And to anyone who's in the European Union or European Economic Area, my tooling is fully GDPR compliant and also is the Privacy Directive compliant. I don't collect anything, so I have nothing to sell, and I have nothing that really needs to have any sort of duty of care over. So that actually removes me from a lot of the different obligations that I'd be under through either of those regulations. But even so, I have it all spelled out here as far as what data may be collected by what parties and why, and also links to their different privacy policies in those cases. If you decide that you want to check and see what those are other services may know about you. And one bit that I do want to highlight here, because this site does not directly collect or store personal data, the maintainer, that's me, generally cannot fulfill data subject rights requests that presuppose the existence of stored personal data, such as access, correction, or deletion requests, with respect to information the site itself holds, because no such information exists in the maintainer's possession. So it's all there, black and white in the privacy policy, as well as the appropriate GDPR provisions that allow me to do this and that I'm guided by. All right, so I'm guessing there's no questions about either of those two. I'm granted there's probably maybe about 3 or 4 people who are ever going to read those, but in their case, it's excellent that I have them. So, yeah. Alrighty. So that's where you are, and we've already talked a bit about where we want to go. We talked about how I want to turn my crypto directory into a survival guide for crypto newbies. I want to get to the point where we have more services there and we have more tooling. And one bit of tooling that I want to add on to the main tooling page at some point is a automatic checker for any sort of problems with your wallets, like for example, any permissions that might seem suspicious that you may want to contact me to get a further look at after you get that bit of a light report from my tooling. So those are a couple things that I want to do with that. And then we have a couple things that are a bit further out into the future. Like, for example, let me go ahead and share my screen again. Now, you all may have noticed that this tooling website is hosted on a subdomain, hrweb3buttons.github.io. I'm beholden to GitHub allowing me to use their service, and by extension, I'm beholden by Microsoft since Microsoft owns GitHub. So eventually, what I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to be able to move this off of GitHub, move this off of a subdomain, and have my very own domain on a very own hosted website. And one other thing I'd also like to do in that same stead is I'd also like to be able to move over to a Nextcloud instance rather than relying on Google Drive. Because again, here I'm beholden to another third party from big tech, that being, of course, Google, for its blessing for me to be able to operate. So in several ways, I'm definitely shackled here a bit. And I don't like that, and the community shouldn't like that either, because that means that ultimately, if someone decides that they don't like what I'm saying or doing for any purpose, then that means they can shut me down at any point. And another thing that I'd really like to do is create a self-hosted AI that I can train with my documentation and my resources to the point where we can have 24/7 help from me to the community, especially while I'm asleep or if I'm busy with another member or doing something involving this tooling or anything else for that matter. And some of you may have noticed this, but AIs don't sleep. So if if we can have that, then that definitely helps the community, and it also helps ease some of the burden off of the executive team as well. A bit of a note that some people aren't aware of in the community. The tooling that I have was originally just meant for the executives to use and maybe some of the more prolific onboarders and team builders in the community, like for example, Paul Thompson. But it got to the point where that original bit of tooling started to leak out to other members until I just decided, hey, let's just announce it to the entire community.
Hmm.
So those are just a couple of the bigger things that I want to do with this tooling in the future, and that I want to do with the entirety of my offerings to the community. But, and this is definitely going to be the part where I do have to say the quiet part out loud a bit. We can't get there if the tooling isn't sustainable. Now, some of you may be watching this or listening, wondering what that speaks to ultimately. And let me show you a bit as to where that's leading. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. You may have noticed that there's a couple sections here on the main tooling that look a bit differently from the other sections. You can see that there's a blue banner surrounding two sections here on the core part of the tooling site. And does anyone know what those two sections have in common, why they're highlighted, so to speak?
Nope.
Alrighty, so let's go back to the tooling and take another look. The first one that's sort of highlighted and has a blue border here, so it kind of catches your attention a bit more, is the two common donation options. And then the last one at the bottom of the page is my premium support services. And so would anyone like to say what those two have in common?
I'll go. My screen's off. One would be, Hunter, a donation for you. And the other one would be a premium, like a yearly premium fund that people might like to do or lock in. Yeah. Is that correct
Well,
or not?
well, you're half right. Let's go ahead and go back over to the tooling. And The premium services that are offered here are the program analysis and risk review and the wall permission and approval check. In both cases, these involve money going ultimately into my coffers in one way, shape, or form. And one thing that I do want to mention is that anything that's made that goes into those coffers goes directly to the sustainability of the tooling. So this is definitely a bit of an uncomfortable conversation to have. You may have noticed that I keep dancing around what ultimately needs to be said here, but ultimately I need help from the community in order to make this sustainable, in order to keep this going. And the main way that the community can help from that is through financial means. There, I said it.
Yep, you did.
And
Absolutely.
and we haven't had that. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Now I added this border to the donation options here probably about a month and a half ago, and I added the dedicated donations option page. I think just shy of a month ago now. Now, would anyone like to guess how many people have used either of those options?
Dozen?
Lower.
6, half a dozen.
5.
I won't keep you all in suspense. As far as I can tell from the bib tracking that I can deploy there, no one has used those.
Uh,
No one. After all the time and effort I've spent on this, no one really notices it. And I partly blame myself for that because ultimately I'm the victim of my own success here. Because I've said it several times here, my tooling has become de facto infrastructure. So people think of it as, the same way they think of, for example, roadways, electricity, or anything else that powers our day-to-day lives and helps us be comfortable. Now, they may notice it, they may be happy about it every once in a while, but they don't really think much deeper into it. They don't really think what all went into making it work and what's keeping it work. Now, do they? I mean, how many of you drive each and every day? Or at least
not
once or
every day.
twice a week? Or at least once or twice a week?
Yeah.
Joe, when was the last time that you thought about the roads that you drive on?
The last time I saw what?
When was the last time that you gave much of any real thought to the roads that you drive on and what went into them?
I don't know. I guess I can't say.
My tooling has reached the same level of sort of infrastructure in our community. And that cuts both ways. On the one hand, I'm really happy that I built something that can reach that point in our community. I like knowing that it helps so many people in the community, and I like knowing that I can help so many people. But by the same token, I in the case of roadways, in most cases, this is done through taxes, but what happens if those taxes disappear and suddenly nothing is funding those roadways for their upkeep or any improvements to them or anything of the sort? They
Go down
they
the
start. Go ahead.
Oh, they wouldn't be much good anymore, would they, Hunter?
Yeah, they start to decay, they start to get potholes, and they start to get to the point where they ultimately become unusable because they have been kept up because there's been nothing to help with the upkeep.
So what can you do, Hunter? Can you put a joining fee on it, or what can you do so that we can support you to keep going?
So I want to keep the main part of the tooling completely free to access. But as to what can we do, I'm doing it because again, it's been about a month and a half since I added this border. It's been just shy of a month since I've added the donation options. And something else also in on the crypto directory. If you take a look at the notices I have here, there's actually some links that are affiliate links here. And I do have this fully disclosed here, so I'm fully in cooperation compliance with laws regarding that you have to give notice of, hey, this will give you, hey, this is an affiliate link, which will give me a bit of consideration in some way, shape, or form. But one thing that I do want to make clear to you all, is that ultimately has no bearing as to if a bit of tooling or a site is added to the directory here. I don't add it here unless it's something that I would use myself or in fact do use myself. So if I can collect a few cents of referral income here and there from that, then absolutely, and that actually helps with sustainability. Now, not many people visit this, so that really hasn't been realized much at all yet. I I am hopeful that as I go this further out, then we may reach that point, but so far we're just not there. This is a hard conversation to have. Some of you may be thinking of this like I'm just splashing cold water on you all spaces here. How do you think I feel having to have this conversation?
Well,
And to be completely fair, this isn't something that's unique to me. This isn't something that's unique to Pool Funding or anything else in the community or the ecosystem. This is a big problem across a lot of Web3 and free and open source infrastructure and free and open source ecosystems out there. Everyone is more than happy to use the tooling that's out there. Everyone is more than happy to give thanks to the developer or maintainer every now and then. But again, they really don't think too much about what goes into the tooling and what goes into what's made. And even less so when it comes time to try and make sure that the thing that you enjoy gets kept up. And this isn't the only point where you actually have this problem personally, even because there's actually a lot in our day-to-day lives that runs off of one particular operating system and one particular bit of tooling, for example, yet not many people outside of the tech community know about it. And this is definitely a question for the non-technical folks, which I imagine is, well, most folks on this call. Have any of you ever heard of Linux?
of what?
No,
Linux, Linux.
no.
No.
What if I told you all that Linux is the most popular operating system in the world by a way major wide margin?
Hmm.
And you know something? you use it each and every day, probably multiple times a day, without really even knowing it. Like for
Obviously.
example, AJ, do you have an iPhone or an Android?
iPhone.
Okay, well, that's iOS, but Nola, do you use an iPhone or an Android?
I've got an Android, Samsung, Hunter.
Yeah, me too.
Right, well, Nola, Joe, what if I told you that Android is based off of Linux?
I'd believe you.
Yeah, I believe you too.
So you use Linux each and every day, and most of the websites that you access each and every day also use Linux because you know the one main thing that Linux has going for it, which makes quite literally each and every company use it at some point along their lifespan. It's free.
Mm.
Ah, wow.
And there's several different implementations of Linux, several different ways of doing an operating system with Linux. It's a free and open source operating system where you can customize it to be exactly what you need it to be. And that is really helpful in applications where, like, for example, you need something that's just a command line only. Like, for example, if you're using a headless system that needs to stay online but
Yeah.
doesn't need anything
Very
that's operated by Microsoft, Linux has you covered. And we can we could do an entire separate meeting going over all the use cases and different reasons why someone, either a company, an individual user, or anyone else for that matter, might want to use Linux. But point of fact is, you use it several times each and every day. And part of the reason why Linux is so successful, even though it's free, is because we have so many people just like me that are helping to improve it. Now, that's not exactly parallel cases here. I'm not working on anything Linux based, but it's people with the same mentality that I have. I'll give you all another example. You all might have heard from the news, I think probably about a decade and a half ago, regarding an SSL bug that was branded as Heartbleed in the media. If any of you remember that, that was a bit of tooling that most major websites across the world used at the time, and many of which still use. Google uses it, Yahoo uses it, AOL used it at the time, Facebook uses it. There's a lot of different bits and bobs on the internet out there that use it. And would anyone like to take a guess as to how many people there are maintaining that bit of tooling?
Totally guessing.
Two people. Two people for something that's used by multi-billion-dollar companies all around the world.
I was going to guess in the thousands. It's way off.
Yeah, the
Wow.
point of facts is
Wow.
there's a lot. The point of facts is there's a lot of different bits of tooling. There's a lot of different pieces of software and a lot of dependencies out there that suffer from the exact same problem I'm talking about right here and right now. If any of you have some spare time on your hands right now and then, look up the horror stories of the LetPad incidents and the Etsy utilities incidents. I can actually go ahead and put a bit about those in the wall of joy after we're done here if anyone would like, although not very joyful. In the case of LetPad, this was a bit of tooling that was about 11 lines of code, but millions of websites used it ultimately through some sort of dependency or another, something that some website use that bit of tooling, those learn lines of code, and ultimately it just cascades to the point to where that small application, those learn lines of code just being gone like they were for a few hours, that quite literally broke the internet for a few hours due to so much stuff that was using it. And with Etsy Utils, I do want to be a bit careful with what I say here since this is recorded, but again, this bit of tooling was commonly used as a dependency by several different servers in several different countries all around the world. And it got to the point where it had a backdoor inserted into it as part of a social engineering attack that we're pretty sure was conducted ultimately by a nation state. And it was just about 2 weeks or so before these bad actors had succeeded in their plans, and they would have had access to millions upon millions of different devices and servers all across the world to do whatever they wanted with. The only thing is, the backdoor was noticed by one engineer working at Microsoft who was taking a look at the code in his own spare time. If that one person had not noticed, if that one person had not seen it, then we'd probably be looking at a very different world today.
Wow.
That
That's
is
really
not
scary.
that is not hyperbole. I give you my word on that. Now, is my tooling anywhere near as important? No, absolutely not. But yeah, they're completely in separate universes. I'll say that right now. But we can see some parallels as to how it would impact our community, our little portion of the internet here, if my tooling was gone one day. I'm saying this to you all now because ultimately I want to say that I'm not afraid to have the difficult conversations, and I'm not afraid to say that we need something better than what we've had. I'm not afraid. Are you?
No.
No.
All righty. So with that just about covers everything that I want to go over for this call, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right, so are there any questions, comments about any of that we've gone over tonight?
Well, I just wanted to let you know, Hunter, that I made a little donation for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hunter, just out of interest, I mean, for example, I have your wallet address in my MetaMask, so I know the few times I've sent you a donation, it's always just been using it that way, not through your web tool. So are there many other people doing that for you?
So I have a couple other people that do donate to me every now and then, but as far as that number versus the amount of people that I help, it's definitely in the minority. I don't want to give exact numbers, but I can probably count on one hand the number of people that do that regularly, to be honest.
Okay. Mm.
And I do notice when everyone does that, by the way. I have most users' wallet addresses tagged in my iteration of BSC scan, so I absolutely do notice when anyone donates to me, and it absolutely is much appreciated. Your support matters more to me than I can really express, although I probably expressed quite a bit on this call, I more so than I
That's all
probably
right.
wanted to at first.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah,
You,
that's fine. I
you
was
gotta,
yeah,
yeah, with what you've just shared with us, which is surprising, that
Mm,
so few people have actually, you know, contributed to all the work, monetarily give you a little bit of, a little bit of money for all the work that you've done for us. And you've created an amazing little system there. Um, yeah, so it's kind of shocking that, to hear that
yeah.
so few have chipped in. So I think we definitely need to change that.
My sentiments exactly, Joe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that there's going to be at least one or two people watching this because odds and numbers being what they are, that are probably just saying, okay, whatever, drama queen. I, don't get me wrong, people. I absolutely love all the praise I get for the tooling. I absolutely love hearing how it helps so many people. I absolutely love hearing how it changes so much for our community. But the bottom line is that we can't build the road if there aren't funds to build the road.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
No amount of praise, no amount of cheering on for the team working on building the road is going to build that road. Now is it?
Oh,
Yep.
And that's not being mean. That's not chiding folks. That's not anything of the sort. That's just the economic realities of how stuff works in our world.
yeah, exactly.
It's just fact. It's
Yeah.
just
It's what we're supposed to be doing. We're a community.
Yeah,
Look out for one another.
that's right.
Absolutely. And I do know some people that have absolutely committed to doing more to help when we get to the point where we have more funds and more flow going through the community. And I absolutely am thankful to those people for their commitments because they're going to be part of what helps keeps us going here. Alrighty, so are there any other comments, questions, anything of the sort before we close out?
Nope.
No, I think,
no
Sounds
thanks,
great.
Hunter.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty, we'll go ahead and close out as per tradition. Does anyone think I'll get it right this time?
Absolutely.
What do you think? You always ask us. Now we're going to ask you. What do you think? Come on now.
I am never confident.
Oh,
Alrighty. 3, 2, 1. To the moon! Unfortunately, I can't do anything about that. Alrighty, well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.